Nick Maravets of Locked On Cyclones. Reading Athlon Sports way too early Big 12 predictions. They have Arizona State at number 1, Kansas State at 2, then BYU at 3, and Iowa State at 4. But it sounds like where you would disagree is taking those first two and flipping them with those 3rd and 4th ranked schools. You have BYU, Iowa State in the Big 12 championship next season. Do you think that's the most likely path we're headed down?
Yeah, I do. And obviously, as the Locked On Cyclones host here, we'll start kind of in that Cyclone territory. Yes, I feel like this has been the most active Iowa State has been in the transfer portal in some time. Maybe I'm mistaken, but just looking at the movement here, we lose quite a few defensive ends. That is the biggest concern that I have for this team. But look at who we're bringing in at wide receiver. Xavier Townsend of UCF and Chase Sowell, I think, maybe won't completely replace Higgins and Knoll. I don't know if you ever could do that. The only pair of receivers to go over 1,000 yards in this regular season in the entire country is unbelievable. The fact that it came from Iowa State means so much more. But Sowell and then obviously Townsend being a friend of Rocco, I've talked about multiple times. Did Devontae and Aaron Rodgers make a ton of noise in New York? Unfortunately, no. But look at any game outside of looking at the numbers, their connection is undeniable. So Xavier Townsend coming in as a friend of Rocco is, outside of what he's done at UCF, huge, in my opinion, for chemistry. And we saw, obviously the Noah Pauley interview for San Fran, but he ends up coming back. What can he do with these new wide receivers? Another year with Rocco under his belt. I think offensively, this Iowa State team could be the best we've seen in a while. And then you mentioned the Carson Hansen return. And Iowa State offense is something that we've kind of talked about in the last however long you want to go for back. A struggling point. Now it's going to be the defense, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But offensively, I'm very, very confident in this Iowa State team.
For BYU, and this is from Athlon Sports, Kalani Sitake's team is loaded for another run at the conference title in 2025. Jake Retzlaff being back. LJ Martin being back. One of the better defenses in the Big 12 as well. Fewest points allowed in the conference, 19.6 last season. Harrison Taggart, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker. The names go on and on for what BYU will bring back next season. They will be in the top 5 in the Big 12. They should be a number 1, 2, 3 pick preseason in this conference as well. And I believe, to me, this is one of the matchups we did not get in 2024 that could have represented a Big 12 championship. It would have felt like a Big 12 title if Iowa State went on the road and played in Provo, or BYU would have taken on Iowa State in Ames. Is this a big, because, this was the People's Big 12 championship. That's what Jake Retzlaff said about Colorado and BYU. Is this a recap of what the 2024 title should have been or could have been?
I don't know, honestly. Obviously BYU throttling Colorado was kind of fun to witness, but I don't know if I'd go so far as to say what it should have been. As we talked about previously, you get into conference championships by numbers. So there is no committee deciding it's Iowa State versus Arizona State. And yeah, you can make the argument the best teams. And that's at the end of the day, to me, Iowa State deserved to be in by the numbers. They got in. Did they get blown out? Yes, but they got in because they earned it. That's it. That's all. I'm going to leave it at that, because they didn't necessarily earn it or deserve it with their on the field play. At the end of the day, it looked pretty rough, but numbers wise, they got in when they were supposed to.
There is a major question that most people are asking themselves right now. How could these two play in the Big 12 championship when they already will square off in the regular season? They'll be at Jack Trice. We don't know the date of that game yet. To me, looking at Iowa State's schedule next year, BYU schedule, I should say next year, it plays out favorably enough that I don't think the winner or loser of that game will matter as much down the stretch. We could see an 11-1 Iowa State, an 11-1 BYU, or a 12-0 Iowa State, 11-1 BYU. Flip those around however you want. Is the Big 12 chaotic enough that we could see a regular season rematch in the conference title game?
Absolutely. Obviously, the Big Ten's where people are going to look. Everyone thought it'd be Ohio State, Oregon in that Big Ten championship, but then things go the way they do in the regular season and they shake out differently at the end of the year. Now, the Big 12, I will say this. Iowa State defeats Iowa, maybe a little bit preemptively. I said Iowa State now going to be national champions. We go 7-0. You lose 2 in a row and you find yourself in the middle of ocean. Just no life raft anywhere. You control your own destiny as far as wins and losses week to week, but you need help to make it. Right? You've lost to Texas Tech. You've lost to Kansas. Things are down more than ever. But all of a sudden, things fall your way, you win what you need to, and you find yourself in the house that Jerry built. So I think that right there, it's literally just months ago is the perfect example of this conference will eat itself alive. Will anyone see it coming? Unlikely. Did anyone take Kansas in that 3-4 week span? Maybe at the end of it. I think last year's a perfect example, though, of you never know. It could be, and 2-win Arizona, hypothetically speaking, that just rips up the top and a team that was in the middle of the pack. I mean, we had Baylor almost made the Big 12 championship game. Are you kidding me?
True. The Bears were a game away at the end of the season. Could have done it in the last week, which is stunning within itself. For Iowa State next year, going on the road against Cincinnati and Colorado, those will certainly be tough. At Oklahoma State, who you already said could be a sneaky championship pick. TCU is not a fun road game either. And then a home game against Arizona State or BYU will build a tough schedule. Again, I think BYU is in a fairly favorable spot. It is good ultimately that Iowa State does not play Kansas State in a conference game, so that loss doesn't hurt your college football playoff chances, but you can still land a massive win in the pre-conference, as odd as that is. Baylor and Utah felt that this last season. When you analyze the Iowa State schedule, does it pan out in a way where you see the Cyclones? We know they'll be good, but the schedule panning out in a way where the Cyclones can take advantage.
I see it almost panning out in a way where Iowa State makes a very real run at the 12-team playoff. I mean, that's a good schedule right there. BYU, if they're in this situation we're laying out where they make the Big 12 title game. Colorado, and I talked about just how much prime matters there. The Arizona State. First off, I'd love to see an Iowa State-Arizona State rivalry born. Look at the basketball game that just happened this weekend. Absolutely electric there, that environment. But that being said, that will depend largely on how does their loss of Cam Scottaboo affect the team. Can't tell you quite yet. And then obviously the win potentially over Kansas State in Ireland would be absolutely legendary. So I think, yes, there is a very realistic path for them to make the Big 12 championship. That's why we're having this conversation. But even more than that, this schedule almost lends itself to you could get in with one loss and come in as, I don't know if I would say outside of a Big 12 championship getting in, maybe as an at-large bid there. But it's very possible. I think this is a very realistic schedule for the Cyclones here.
ESPN has BYU at number 9 in the country, Iowa State at number 11 next season, and they're way too early top 25. If they were to pick a Big 12 championship, it would be these two schools. I don't think anybody would be shocked if the Cougars and the Cyclones square off. Two long-tenured coaches, guys who have won at the highest level before, meeting in Arlington. Quite the possibility. Nick Maravets, where can folks find more of your work?
You can find me at Nick Marv on Twitter, and then Locked On Cyclones here on YouTube, baby, every day. Your team every day.
That's pretty easy. When you're not making Locked On Cyclones your first listen every single day, you can make Locked On Big 12 your first listen every day. This has been, and it always will be, Nick, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother.
Locked On. Thanks again for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.